1940. All 10 teams returned for another season, with the Pirates rebranding to their current name of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The season was most notable for its epic finale. With the Bears and Redskins winning their respective divisions, the championship game headed to the nation's capital for the first time. Despite having the best record in the regular season and playing in front of their home crowd, the Redskins were utterly obliterated by the Bears in what remains the greatest margin of victory ever in American professional football. The Bears secured their fourth title with an NFL record 73 points, while the Redskins were held to 0 points on the other end of the field. Sammy Baugh, who led the league in passing during the regular season, was pulled after throwing 2 interceptions. His replacement, Frankie Filchock, threw 5 more. 4 separate running backs scored for the Bears, setting an NFL record of 7 touchdowns in a single playoff game, which would stand for another 8 years. At the conclusion of the season, Dodgers quarterback Ace Parker was named league MVP, while the Bears selected Michigan halfback Tom Harmon with the first overall pick in that year's draft. 1941. This season was notable for being the first with Wilson designated as the official game ball provider of the NFL, a distinction which they have held for over 80 years. Following Carl Stork's resignation as league president, the position was reconstituted into league commissioner, with Elmer Layden elected as the league's first. The Packers and Bears ended the season tied atop the Western Division, necessitating the first ever divisional playoff game. The Bears hosted and won the game, sending them to a championship against the Eastern champion New York Giants. With the better record, the Bears remained the home team for the final, defeating the Giants 37-9 and tying the Packers for league most 5 titles. At the season's conclusion, Packers wide receiver Don Hutson was named league MVP. The Steelers selected Virginia halfback Bill Dudley with the first overall pick in the annual draft. 1942. With Japan having attacked Pearl Harbor at the end of the previous season, the rosters of each team were severely depleted as many players took up arms for the United States. While the Redskins won the East, the Bears finished the regular season undefeated and sought to become the first team to win every game in pursuit of a record 6th championship. The Redskins were designated the home team, and in a desperate attempt at retribution for their home failure 2 years earlier, the Redskins dethroned the Bears by a score of 14-6, securing their second title. Don Hutson became the first ever 2-time league MVP, while the Lions selected Georgia halfback Frank Sinkwich with the first overall pick in the draft. 1943. With the Second World War accelerating overseas, the rosters of every team continued to face the anxiety of potential conscription. 3 teams were granted special concessions from the league to maintain franchise rights while suspending operations. The Cleveland Rams completely suspended operations prior to the start of the season, expecting to return the season following, while the 2 teams in Pennsylvania were awarded permission to merge their rosters for the season and compete in 2 separate home cities, becoming the now legendary Phil Pitt Steagles. Down to 8 teams, the Bears and Redskins repeated as league champions, meeting in a rematch held at Wrigley Field. The Bears won the rematch 41-21, securing a record-setting 6th title. Bears quarterback Sid Luckman became the first Jewish league MVP, while the first overall pick was awarded to an upcoming expansion team in Boston, with which they selected the Notre Dame quarterback Angelo Bertelli. 1944. Continuing to suffer the height of World War II, the league added the aforementioned Boston Yanks as a replacement 10th team. The Dodgers changed their name to the Brooklyn Tigers. The Eagles and Rams returned as full-roster teams, but the Steelers, who were still struggling with reduced personnel, merged for a second season, this time with the Chicago Cardinals, becoming a 2-city team known as Card Pitt. This is the only season in league history where 2 separate teams went without a single win, with the Tigers and Card Pitt both suffering 10 consecutive losses. However, since 1944, only 5 teams have gone winless, the next coming a full 16 years later. At the top of the tables, the Giants and Packers won their respective divisions with 8 wins, meeting for a championship at Polo Grounds where the Packers edged their way to a record-tying 6th title. Detroit halfback Frank Sinkwich was named league MVP, and with the first overall pick in the draft, the Cardinals selected Georgia halfback Charlie Trippi. 1945. With the Steelers finally returning to full strength at the conclusion of World War II, the league retained a balance of 10 teams by merging the Boston Yanks and Brooklyn Tigers, becoming a single franchise still based in Boston, but now only referred to, without the city name, as the Yanks. The Redskins returned to the top of the East, while the Cleveland Rams made a surprise push atop the West, winning their first division title with a league-best record of 9-1. The 2 teams met in Cleveland, where the Rams outlasted in a nail-biter finish of 15-14, securing the Rams their first and only title in the city of Cleveland. Rams quarterback Bob Waterfield was named league MVP, while the Yanks selected Notre Dame quarterback Frank Dansowich with the first overall pick in the draft. 1946. The Yanks relinquished their connection to Brooklyn by returning as the Boston Yanks, while the defending champion Rams chose to abandon the city of Cleveland altogether and move to Los Angeles, becoming the first of 2 tenures as the Los Angeles Rams, playing at the Los Angeles Coliseum. The Bears and Giants returned to top their divisions, meeting at the championship game in New York, where the Bears outscored the Giants 24-14 to win a record-setting 7th title. Steelers halfback Bill Dudley was named league MVP, while the Bears rather regrettably chose Oklahoma A&M halfback Bob Fenimore, ahead of Heisman winner Glenn Davis, the future Hall of Famer who would go second to the Lions. 1947. The league expanded the schedule from 11 games to 12, and issued a rule disallowing games to be played on Tuesdays. In the Eastern Division, a tie between the two Pennsylvania teams necessitated a second-ever division playoff game, which was hosted in Pittsburgh. The hometown Steelers were obliterated by the Eagles, but it hardly mattered. They would move on to meet the Cardinals in the league championship, where they lost 21-28, and the Cardinals secured their second title just 2 years after losing 19 straight games. However, this title would be the last of the franchise. As of recording, the Cardinals' 77-year championship drought remains the longest in all of North American professional sports. For the first time in 10 years, the league did not award a Most Valuable Player. In the annual draft, the Redskins selected Alabama back Harry Gilmore with the first overall pick. 1948. For the first time, the league allowed tees for kickoffs rather than requiring a holder. Referees were also required to use whistles. For the previous 28 seasons, several officials used handheld horns to alert players of a dead ball. This season is also notable for the appearance of the Rams' horn logo, making its way to the side of their helmets. This was the first helmet logo in the league, and remains a significant part of the Rams' identity. The Eagles repeated as Eastern Division champions, meeting the Cardinals in the league championship at Shibe Park in Philadelphia. Despite the league setting a record that season for points per game, the championship was affected by an East Coast blizzard, and securing a single touchdown in what was otherwise a scoreless game, the Eagles went on to win their first league title. At the conclusion of the season, Cardinals fullback Pat Harder was named league MVP, while the Eagles selected Pennsylvania center and future Hall of Famer Chuck Bednarik with the first overall pick. 1949. Suffering financial losses in Boston, much like the Redskins had seen prior to their move to Washington, Yanks owner Ted Collins successfully lobbied the league for financial assistance and relocation to New York City, returning the former Brooklyn franchise to the Big Apple after 4 seasons and becoming the New York Yanks. The Eagles won their third straight division title and went off to Los Angeles to face the Rams, who won their first division title on the West Coast. The Eagles would defeat the Rams for their second straight title in the first of what would be many league championships hosted in the greater Los Angeles area. At the end of the season, the MVP prize went unawarded. The Lions selected Notre Dame and Leon Hart with the first overall pick in the draft.